This is Cyber Smokehouse, and I'm Ernie.
And I'm Graham.
Join us as we grill the minds, dig into the experience, and serve up the stories of leaders in cybersecurity.
Cyber Smokehouse is sponsored by TBD Cyber, a cybersecurity strategy consulting firm. All right, well, today's guest is someone we are thrilled to be speaking with. He's a seasoned security professional, strategist, data protection expert, speaker, and company leader. With over 25 years of cybersecurity experience, he's worked with high-profile organizations including CrowdStrike and Mimecast. He's a well-respected speaker at security events like Secure World and the Cybersecurity Collaborative. Chief Information Security Officer at Cushman Wakefield, Erik Hart. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, guys. How are you?
We're doing great. Welcome, Erik. So since we have a smokehouse theme, let's light the fire and crank up the heat on this smokehouse. One of the questions we usually like to start with is just talking about the industry in general. And one thing we'd like to throw at you is what are the most cybersecurity challenges that you're seeing out there right now, just for organizations and for you in particular?
Sure. I think some of the biggest challenges I see right now, so there's a few things. So number one, I think you get a lot of people and a lot of vendor and a lot of inundation with things right now. So everybody's got a new solution. So I participate quite a bit in a lot of the venture capital startups and other things with things I do in CyberStarts, and other things. And, there's lots of different solutions out there. And it's really, I think, a few things. So number one, deciding what are the right solutions for your organizations and which ones are adding value. Number two, you also have going down this path of the platformization, and I don't know if that, so it's, I'll make sure that gets added into Webster's dictionary, but is really just that whole look of, okay, do you go and buy, and I think the old days of, we all bought in that, upper magic quadrant, and you bought in that and stuff like that, solution for identity here, a solution for email here, this, that, and you had all these things, but then operationalizing was tough. Now you get, where that platformization is, do you just invest in one, like CrowdStrike and stuff like that, and doing things in their suite? We've done a number of things in their suite. They have some really, good products there, but there's also a lot of things out there. I think that's number one. It's like, again, finding that balance. The biggest thing in all of that is, and I'm a big proponent of it, and a friend of mine who's a CISO, it's words that I love that he'd always say. He goes, why would I buy something and not turn on all the features that I possibly can? And I think that's a great thing. You see it too much of people buy things and then they don't fully operationalize and they don't fully implement the sort of things. Then they're looking for another solution down the road. I think that's number one. Number two, I think a lot of security now is becoming a data analytics game. Where, like, if you look at vulnerability management, is vulnerability management about running a tool, producing a report, throwing it at a business and saying, 100 things fix? We sound like cave people when we do that to businesses. We generate a report out of that thing, we spin it across, an email, and then go, 100 things fix. And it's really, if you look at that, of those 100 things, you shouldn't be telling your business to go fix those 100 things. Of that, and I think a stat that I had from a vulnerability management provider was less than 10% of vulnerabilities are actually being exploited. So of the 100 things, there's less than 10 on that list, if you play the numbers right, that are actually truly being exploited and where you have risk. So it becomes now where, how do you take the information you have, the data analytics, and really focus on what is truly risky to the business and risky to your organization? I think those are big things, and we don't do enough of that in cybersecurity. We're always just like, oh, well, CVSS is 9. Okay, but you may have something that's a 7 that's being exploited and exposed to the internet, and you have a 9 internally. Well, which one's a bigger risk to your organization in an outage? And that's where I think more and more of cybersecurity becomes about bringing the visibility and the data you have from your different systems together. So if you've invested, like you mentioned with CrowdStrike, Microsoft, Zscalers, all those other things together, and give you a holistic picture and say, what are truly those risky, exploitable things that you need to go out and fix and work with your business, not just fix everything. Because I've never worked in an organization ever where there is no risk and there are no vulnerabilities ever in my entire career. And I don't know if either of you have. I would love to get the name of that company. Maybe I can go work.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think the whole idea of bringing all the data from all your different security tools together to give you that kind of that perspective across the enterprise. I think, most organizations, that's still really challenging, right? Because each of the tools, while they provide good reporting maybe in their own way, trying to integrate the reporting and pull it together. So I don't know if you've seen anything that does a really good job of that. I know, certainly in the vulnerability space, there's aggregators tools available now that do aggregate from different, from scanners and other threat sources and so on. But that's, I think, finding that it's kind of a little bit of a holy grail in some ways, right? Going for that kind of integrated perspective where you've got all of your tooling providing you kind of data in a single pane of glass.
Well, and it's interesting, Graham, what you mentioned there too, is because you're right. A lot of us in anything, in any organization, a lot of us are paying for some of the same things 2 or 3 times, so vulnerability data, if we look at that, well, you can get a number of things, from Microsoft, from Defender. That's part of most, licensing that people have. You have obviously other tools that most have invested in, an endpoint detection response sort of things. So, those are also producing information as well. Some may cost you a little bit to get the information. Some it may be there. And it's like, again, you have these pieces and it's like how you put it together. And that's what I'm finding more fascinating in my job. Again, it's not about just, look for a thing that is, above a 7 with a red, little red coloring next to it. It's trying to piece the things together. And also then looking at, even as you do those things, is we've all made investments into our cybersecurity posture. So when you're investing in the CrowdStrikes, the Zscalers, the Mimecast, the other stuff like that, well, how is the compilation of those things also working to protect you? I still remember when Log4Shell came out, and everybody, oh my God, run to the hill. Oh my God, the world is coming to an end. The sky is falling, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria, everybody stop everything you're doing. And it was like, you have to go patch this. Well, that was an application component. You couldn't just, in most things, at least what I saw, couldn't go in, just turn off the app, put in new, Log4Shell version and start it up and expect that engine to just turn over and start again. Like it didn't work because you had a whole application around it built on using a component that you just switched. But what was interesting, like for us, the investments like in CrowdStrike, would CrowdStrike stop like an attack or something for that being exploited? No. But if it was, boy, did it go off. And if you've invested in like Overwatch, and you got alerts coming at you left, right, and sideways from them about it was going on. So I'm like, you had a bit of a compensating control. Now it was a monitoring control or detection control, I should say. It wasn't a prevention one, but it's still something. And it's like, what are those things? Microsoft's even gotten better, at things in Defender when they had some SharePoint issues this past year. They built in some things that if it was being exploited, Defender would actually stop those things. And that's what you got to look at too, is you're investing in using these other things that also are protecting you. So it takes while it is a 9, it takes that risk down. And I'm not saying ignore it, but it's the whole, is that what you should be focusing on right now?
I'd be amiss not to bring it up, but we talk about the aggregation of data and analyzing it. I mean, have you seen, I guess, how is AI playing into this? Is it overhyped? Is it helping? What have you seen from your perspective, and where are you applying it?
I think I think AI will help. This is one of those areas that AI is good at, like big data analytics of things that are obviously, Word and stuff like that. You see AI working well, in writing code and stuff like that. I'm not saying that everything it writes is secure, but I'm just saying it can do that obviously at speed and velocity that most people can't. Analyzing a lot of unstructured data. So that's, again, where you have a lot of that unstructured data. And I think that's where AI and the combination of AI and like some automation. So we look at, the RPA stuff, in the past. How do you take the AI and turn that into automation? We're doing a number of those things, not on the security side, but actually on some stuff that we do with a level of our license management. Say, okay, if this and this, these certain rules and stuff match, look here, is that data being used, or is that feature set being used? If not, okay, we're now then going to take this action. I think you're going to see AI where I think the big thing is, how can AI, and this is bigger than security, how can AI help in a bunch of IT maintenance and automation work more than anything else? Because look, everybody, well, not everybody, but I know a number of organizations. What in IT in general, and since I'm in IT security, I kind of lump it all together. What are the two big things that usually happen a lot? Number one is in IT people responding to incident, i.e. firefighting. Like whether that ticket comes in, whether the alert goes off, they all love to be a firefighter. Like everybody, when you save that kitten in a tree, you're a hero and that stuff. Number two is then projects, things that have defined stuff, project managers running them, doing those sorts of things. There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, and there's usually a little gold star at the end of it that says, oh, look, yeah, you accomplished stuff. Everybody gets a gold star. What's missing in the middle is a bunch of this maintenance work. The unsexy, unfun stuff of analysis of how many of these accounts aren't being used and, this, that, or whatever. I look at, licensing sorts of things in the other part of my job. I think AI, teaming with levels of automation, can help with a bunch of this, what I call IT maintenance posture sort of things in the middle that can do a bunch of the big analysis and pull in a bunch of different data and say, hey, look, this hasn't been used in this, and we check this, and all these other things haven't happened. So this is a prime candidate for maybe an account that can be turned off. Those sorts of things. Doing that maintenance will keep you out of, number one, the firefighting. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is I don't want to have to be responding to incidents if we do the cleanup and care and feeding. If you brush your teeth every day, you reduce your likelihood of getting cavities.
Well said. Well said. Let's transition to some questions here about leadership, Erik, because I know you've been leading teams for a long time, and I'd be really interested to hear a little bit about what the secret sauce is in Erik's approach to leadership. So maybe, what's your kind of leadership philosophy, and what are the maybe a couple of things that you find really work well in leading teams?
Sure. So I think there's a few things. If you look at leading teams and also being, a leader in an organization. So for me, what's worked well? Being responsive. And for me, I'm like, I don't care if it's the CEO or if it's it's one of our site workers. I typically, if they're coming to me, I'm going to be responsive in a way. Now, yes, there is a prioritization. I will more than likely answer the CEO email first. If there was one in, then maybe the site server. But I'm like, it's not that it's going to be ignored. So it's being responsive. Now, granted, that comes with sometimes, and my team will tell me that I am too much as we talk about, I don't take a whole lot of time off. I've even been on a cruise ship with surprisingly awesome internet speed, in the middle of the ocean and stuff like that. I was like, wow, this actually works really well. So it comes with its pros and cons. But again, if you are looked at in your organization, in your team, and in your organization as a go-to person, people are going to come to you with things. Now, for me, I'm not always going to have the answer, but also for the years that I've been in my organization, I typically will either know somebody who does or can point them in a direction and help. Like I'm not always going to have the answer, for something. And that's led to, again, being where some people will come to me. Even over the time, these past few weeks, I've had, people come to me with this or that. And I'm like, oh no, that's, this person, they'll get you that answer and stuff like that. I do try to not always be the one that responds. That is one of my, flaws of stuff like that. It's like I always feel the need to respond to those things. Other things for leading teams, I try to give them ideas to run with, like try to plant the seeds and see where the teams, where the people go with sorts of things. I think that's important, and like, well, what about this and that? And then seeing where that goes. Where do they go? If they hit roadblocks, how do you help them, pass those roadblocks? I think the third thing for me leading a team well is also challenging the norm. I come from, and I started my career as an IT auditor, right, wrong, or indifferent. I know also people around here, I do have a nickname of the Grinch, for my organization, not because I say no to everything. There are a number of things, but because I'm always challenging different things, whether it's in the IT security space, or whether it's even in other areas that I have responsibility for. It's just because been doing it that way for years doesn't mean it's the right way now. And I think that's important for everybody and that's what I'm doing in vulnerability management, changing and questioning the status quo. We've moved away from, just using a scanner and producing reports to how do I get data from CrowdStrike and Microsoft and feed it in, as you mentioned, Graham, into an aggregator? How do we look at that? What's threat intelligence, that's getting fed into that? Partnering with a third party that's also looking at that data, doing a level of red teaming, or I should say purple teaming, sorry, testing along with that. Them also looking at it and say, hey, this just came out. You have an issue here. You should go look at that. And that becomes, again, I pulled in that data and now I'm connected partners to it to be able to help us and help my team be better, faster, and smarter. And that's just, again, challenging the norm versus I think the old days when new vulnerability came out was, okay, run, scan the environment, see where it is, go fix, run, scan again, wait, see what's fit. And you just kept repeating the same thing over and over again versus this is more of a data analytics and you can do it in near real time, sorts of things. And that's where I think we need to go. And again, challenging the way we've done things for years.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And, Graham and I try to do the same thing with our company is encourage our employees to challenge us as well. Just because we've done something or the bosses doesn't mean, that's always the right way to do things. We may have just done that in getting the company moving, that there's better ways to do it. So always push back and, eventually, we do have to make a decision and go a certain direction. But I think you bring up good points. Challenge the status quo and find better ways to do things. I think that's a good leadership style. So I'm curious about, I'd be curious to get your take on return to office, just given that you're in commercial real estate. You probably want people to go back to the office just as a general market. What is your philosophy, and are you guys going back to the office? Do you guys work remotely? I don't know. Do you think people work effectively at home? How are you guys approaching?
I mean, we have a number of people and stuff like that. I try to go into our office at least once a week. Now, I have a global job and a global remit, so it's hard to go every day with a commute and stuff like that. And plus, I'm traveling and stuff like that, so you mix that in. I think the conversations you can have in person, I think, are invaluable. Now, is it, the old days for me where it's like, necessarily 5 days a week? No, no, I don't think it is, for every organization. Every organization's got the fit. Now, do I also believe that, do I believe that it's, going in every day? No, I think you have to find what that is for organizations, what is for positions. I try to go in when I go in downtown, have meetings with people there, meet with others when they're in town and stuff like that, going to events, that sort of thing. So I think there's a good mix there of, being there at least, at least 2-3 days a week and stuff like that. And again, for me, when I don't have to travel or be somewhere else. And I think you're going to see that in a lot of organizations and stuff, where you're going to see that more and more, that 2, 3, 4 day sort of thing. But again, each job is a little different. And what you have to do and what that remit is.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, so we have a remote workforce, and the team always really enjoys getting together. The personal interaction is very important. But yeah, the everyday coming to the office, I think in our industry will probably not ever happen. With being IT folks. Hey, so switching gears, let's talk about the future. What are you looking at? What excites you about the future in cybersecurity? What in that, what are some exciting initiatives, and maybe also winning lottery numbers? If you happen to add those, I'd take those as well.
Winning the winning Powerball numbers, I'm like, which again, if I had those from last week, what was it? 1.6, 1.7 billion. I don't know if you and I would all of us be talking here today. What excites me about the future? So and for us in roadmap, in security, I think, so number one, I think in a lot of organizations, you are seeing a shift of security from it being, I think, the old days of everything is in a data center and all this stuff, and you're running hardware with, plugs and blinky lights, and you can go in and some of my first jobs. our data center, I could walk over to it. I could, and go in, and you could touch everything, literally physically touch everything. Now, I'm like a vast majority of the things that we run are, cloud-based. But I think for this, or for the future is, so number one, I think as you look at things going more cloud-based and more SaaS, identity becomes more and more important. And I use the phrase a lot of times. I think identity is the new firewall, and maybe even saying it's the new firewall is a little bit old, but identity is the firewall. When you have to have people working off of multiple types of devices, laptops, tablets, phones, in multiple locations all the time, and this whole, you're available all the time, it's very hard to secure that when you need to have that uptime and availability. And especially for us, again, with people all over the world, we have people working at client sites, even off of client computers that need access to things. I can't put certain things on those computers. They're not ours. So we have to allow that level. So that for us, what is the keys? It's that identity. How are you looking at the identity? Is that right? Is it coming from the right things? If it's not, do you do levels of challenge? I think, as you get more and more organizations, I still am a big believer in like passwordless authentication or using pass keys, kind of pick your flavor there. I think SaaS security is, like, for me, the other thing, like what's exciting is, or what we have to look at is like SaaS security, and like, what does that mean? We've seen what happened with, what was it, SalesLoft that got access to Salesforce and all those other things. What does it mean when you have all these things? What does it mean when you have numerous applications that have access to maybe your Google environment or your Microsoft environment? How are you assessing that? How are you looking at that? You can't run, that vulnerability scan on, you can't run a vulnerability scan just on Salesforce. Like, so what is the right ways to look at that? For me, the other exciting things, I think for anybody, reimagining vulnerability management, we talked a little bit about that. I think there's a big play where you marry the data you have from things already that you're buying with some of these continuous threat exposure management, attack surface management, either services, offerings, sorts of things. And how do you take that internal vulnerability data plus this external stuff going in all the time, and you make this cohesive vulnerability management program that is running all the time, and it's not scans you have to run and schedule and do this, that, or whatever. It's just always refreshing. And I think a lot of these outside parties can do a much better job kind of detecting the stuff out there than you can with just running a vulnerability scanner against a certain number of assets. The other area for me, like exciting or even a challenge, is, as we talked a little bit about, is can we figure out a way as an industry to be better at third-party risk management than we have been for decades of just sending a questionnaire and say, we still get them, as we're a service provider. We get over 400 client audit questions, things, stuff that come in, from auditors that come on site for multiple days to something that just gets emailed in, and then you have the everything in between. Then those things where they're asking, do you have a firewall? No, I don't have a firewall. We're a Fortune 500 company, and so we don't know what that is. Do you have antivirus? And I'm like, are you serious? You're asking about antivirus. Can we at least update the term? Like, that's some things I chuckle at, because I'm like, if you're still running, Kaspersky and, and not to pick on them, like semantic antivirus, I'm like, y'all, like, let's move up a little bit in the world here. I think that's, to me, it's just that whole space is like, what do you do? And we as an industry have never, ever, as much as I talk to hundreds of CISOs all the time, we've never been able to come together as a cohesive group to say, this is what should be the standard. Everybody's got their own way that they want to do it with their question, their thing, and their process. And one thing is, for me, I do not think the answer, which I know some organizations go down the path, is some of the scoring platforms and stuff like that, where they're like, we just scour the internet and we tell you this vendor has a score of this, that, or whatever. Like, those things are still fraught with data issues. I understand those companies that are doing that are trying, but it's one of those also where they literally, like some of the ones I get some data that, says, oh my God, this is you and you have this score. And I'm like, I want to look at it and go, do you believe everything on the internet? Like literally everything? Like, because if you do, I have some oceanfront property in Oklahoma to sell you. And that's my problem with those is I understand they're trying, but the data, there's one where data is actually your enemy. It's so fraught with issues and dirty. It's trying to find what is really relevant.
Yeah, I think we had something come up on us, and we just have a static website that we had to make one small change that increased our score.
Yeah. I mean, I get ones where they're like, oh my God, well, this, that, whatever. And I go, well, that's actually an affiliate of ours. I understand. And I get like I was talking to one of the companies once and I'm like, they're like, oh my God, you're so vulnerable to this. I go, well, actually that's our affiliates. They don't run our tech. They don't run our thing. They're like franchisees. That's the best way I can put it. And I know some of my people, if they see this, will be like, you call them a franchisee. I'm like, it's the best, acronym I have or synonym I have for it is they run their own tech. They run their own, but they may carry a Cushman Wakefield name or logo on their website. In different countries or regions where we really don't have an office, it's kind of that affiliate. Well, they see logo, oh my God, it's you. Well, no, it's not. I get how you think it is, but like, well, you got to fix it. No, I don't. It's not our tech. There's no risk to you, and that's been the interesting thing. And we get back to them. What does it all come back to? Risk. I'm trying to point out to these things. This isn't a risk to us. Even if that blew up, not a thing with us would be impacted whatsoever. But just because it carries a name or a logo on the internet, immediately they equate risk. And this is again where then it comes back to is how do you get into with so much stuff? Like, and I was just having this conversation with some of the people on my team in the risk management area. Like, how do we really talk about risk when again, 73% of what powers us is actually SaaS, pure SaaS. Doesn't sit in our data center. Don't care. If our data center, one of them went down, it's not cupcakes and rainbows, but we still operate as a company. Like we do the core things we need to do. Microsoft goes down, us and a lot of people have a really, really bad day and a hard time doing things. Goes down, there's another one. And how do you plan for continuity around massive platforms like that?
And you opened with identity, and I found that interesting because that was, I think, the second conversation in the last week I've had a similar theme. The other one that someone touched on was a concern around all these AI agents that people are spinning up. Is like, how do you eventually start controlling those identities? So non-human identities in the future. And to your point, that's the new firewall. So it's a common theme that I've been hearing.
Well, and one of the things with that, what we've talked about with, and I don't know what the answer is yet to the AI agent identity and see like where that's really going to go. I mean, right now we see, since I control our Microsoft environment, could see people building agents, but are they put out there and being used, prolifically across the organization? No. But what's interesting, like with that is agent, and obviously it's going to be acting like a human. One of the interesting debates to have is if the agentic agents and stuff take off, should that agentic AI identity be a record in your HR system, in your ERP or whatever you're using? Should it be no different than you or me or other who have a Microsoft license or a Google or whatever? Should it be that? And you treat it like it's an employee, which is interesting. It's like, okay, if you do that, then what are you doing or going to look for in it?
I've heard that debate too. And then do they have a reporting structure? So if they do something malicious, do you hold that person who they report to accountable? So if they made a bad agent and it goes off and does something crazy. So that'll be interesting. Or it could be scary. Hopefully they don't take over the world.
Hey, Eric, let's transition a little bit and talk about the young Eric. How did you get into cybersecurity? What was your path? I think you mentioned you started off as an auditor.
Sure.
How did you go from auditing to cybersecurity?
So even before that, we'll get the way back, 25 year ago machine and stuff like that. Is I actually initially started going to college to be in athletic training and kinesiology. So there's an interesting thing. And then halfway through, found out this sucks. I don't like the hours and the time and stuff like that, and I don't think this is going to pay well. And I had always done computer stuff, so went into that in school. I got a job, like my first real job was actually on a help desk. It was a help desk. in a small bank in the Chicagoland area, doing those sorts of building computers, doing the stuff like that, helping that installing Microsoft Office from the CDs that you had the code, and we all had them on their Sharpie with the, 20-digit XY394, blah, blah, like on, which actually when I moved 5 years ago, I found my whole thing of those and my wife made me throw them out because they didn't, they were nostalgic. I like, oh, we had good times. Okay, gone. But so I started there. I then got a call from a friend of mine who was working at a small CPA firm, Crow, was like, hey, we have clients who are running Novell NetWare. And it's like, I knew Novell NetWare. We ran it at my organization I was at way long ago. I was certified in it. They're like, can you audit it and could you hack it? And I go, well, I certainly can build them. And I'm like, I certainly can audit it. And I'm like, hack it. I go, probably. And I'm like, I just need to learn a few things. And actually, that's how I got into IT auditing, was because of an ability to audit as well as hack Novell NetWare systems for clients that they had. And that spurred that. So that became that. Then went to work for one of the clients that was at Crow at the time as their first information security officer. So that was, early 90s. That was early 2000. Excuse me. I don't want to date myself. I just added a decade in my career. So did that and then, worked way through different industries, working at, high frequency trading, an advertising firm, then became CISO at Zebra Technologies. And then ultimately for 7.5 years have been here at Cushman and Wakefield. So, it's weird to say I started as, auditing and hacking an environment or an operating system that's basically not around anymore.
Very popular at the time, though. It was like the Microsoft of today, right? It's crazy. So as you look back on your career, what would you give any advice to the young Erik that to change that trajectory in any way, what advice would you give to a young Erik today?
The advice I would give myself. So I think number one, one of the things I always said, and I see some of these things, I go, I really should have been, because I loved my team and my people here in the organization I work with, said the job I missed on. I should have been a cybersecurity litigator because I love to argue and stuff like that. I love to argue and point and stuff like that. And, so that's a bit of the auditor sort of thing. So I think, one, it's like you look at that. I think the cyber law is still fascinating. I think number two for me, the other thing is I wish I spend more time, and I try to, on the more of the privacy side. There's just a lot that goes on the privacy side. It's so complex now, and especially us being a global company, we have a great new privacy officer who she came in, and the stuff that I learned from her, just talking to her, she's been here for a few months now, maybe 6 months, and I'm like, it's fascinating. She spent her career in it. I think like trying to learn in some of those, I think are the big things for me to look at is like what I give myself advice on. Is in the other thing, what I would tell young people who are out there and stuff, and it's all dependent where you want to go. I had that crossroads in my career many years ago where it was like, do you want to be more, and was when I was at the CPA firm, you want to be more on the client side and do those things in kind of business management, or do you want to be that super techie? And I was like, I'm not the one who's going to sit in the dark room, or in my mom's basement, calling down for the meatloaf and stuff like that at 2 a.m, trying to hack stuff. So one thing I would tell anybody in technology you want to advance, number one, learn basic accounting and finance stuff and how those work. It is amazing today who I still see people who are leaders where doing like basic accounting and finance things are incredibly tough. And we all know, you run business, obviously we have, business here, how much things run on numbers and what you can and cannot do, versus, and that's what runs a vast majority of things. It's not incidents. Yes, incidents will get you so far, but those should only be happening in sporadic moments. That shouldn't be how you manage your cybersecurity organization. There's a lot of budget, a lot of number stuff. I think the other thing for me is, which I'm still always not the best at, is getting in and understanding how you measure the numbers and risk and put those together. And I think that's a big thing because again, your risk, and it drives numbers, how you want to get funded for things, that sort of thing. So at the end of the day, it's all about finance, numbers, budget, running, where those things go, and what you are and are not going to be able to do. And I don't want to have to get a blank check because my organization had an incident.
Well, and it's funny because that's kind of what you opened with. It's don't just go buy stuff all the time. You can think of the finances. So yeah, it makes perfect sense.
So one other question on that, Erik, is, as you're obviously, how do you keep up to date with what's going on in the industry? Where do you get your inputs from? What are you reading, listening to, who you're learning from? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So for me, I'm not a big book person. I'm always kind of going and doing stuff. This is actually a hard time for me since it's winter time here in the Chicagoland area. I usually, like, when I'm done, it's like, okay, I want to go outside and mow the lawn or, deal with the 2 acres of property I have, i.e. not be on a computer or on a phone or stuff like that. I'm not a big book reader, but how I keep up with things. So number one, I think I'm part of a private email group that has about 200 CISOs on it. That all have, roots, starts, or have worked in the Chicagoland area. And we communicate tons of stuff, from jobs that are open to things that are out there. So that's also migrated into Signal and Slack groups, so that collection of talking to your peers, having conversations with your peers. I think for me, those are important. I think also attending some events are important. So I've been, attending Avanta things, a cyber risk collaborative that I mentioned, those sorts of things where you get to meet with peers, but also hear about vendors and solutions and have discussions with them. I love attending dinners that are smaller in group, where you can have a kind of vendor and peer discussion on certain topics. I think those are important. And then for me, the other side of it too is also I do a lot of participation in what I say, kind of that startup area. So through things I do with SageTap, as well as with CyberStarts, get to hear about companies that are up and coming. And I will say, with the compilation of those two, we now have probably, I think it's 4 or 5 vendors that we use now that were found through those channels and stuff, including some that actually are not even security related, that actually my organization, that is our head of innovation and my boss, our CDIO, I saw him. I was like, this is really cool, but I'm not ready there in a cyber thing. Hey, could you do this from a business side? And they're like, yeah, we think we can. I go, let me introduce you to this person. And that became, a partnership that has helped the business and not even been a cyber thing. So I think that's also important too, where you can meet with a lot of those smaller startup companies, potentially do design partnerships. And actually, we've partnered with quite a few that have actually helped us save millions of dollars in actually IT operating costs, because of things we talked to them. I was like, well, this is great, but could you do this? They're like, yeah, we can, we'll work with you to do that. And that's what helps us, because look, we're not the greatest at developing things. We're more of a buy and operationalize. But when you can have those design partners, I think that's also important too. And you get to see also where they're hearing other things from people and developing.
Well, hey, so since this is the Cyber Smokehouse, we figured we should ask some grilling, cooking questions. So when it is not freezing in Chicago, what kind of grill are you? A outdoor cooker, smoker?
I'm an outdoor cooker right now. So I just have the Weber Genesis grill. I have an old electric smoker that I have to say I probably haven't now touched in 3 or 4 years since I moved I moved. And the one thing is, I like doing it, but it's when you had one of those, I wasn't ready to go big time yet. I wasn't going to get, one of those, big giant smoking machine, even though I wanted to. I watched all the TV shows Barbecue Pitmaster or whatever it's called, and all these other things. And even the I think there's a Grill Master or Barbecue Master on Netflix. I forget the name of the show. It was the electric one. It was like time consuming, because you had to check it every hour, and it only had this little thing for the wood chips and stuff. I have been egged on by actually a head of customer success for one of our vendors. He has a Traeger grill with the pellet hopper smoker. It's got the little thermometer. I think it's even got Wi-Fi on it that, set it, forget it sort of thing. And I literally get probably monthly a picture of something he smoked, And then the next is, when are you actually going to get off your behind and actually buy one? And I'm like, yeah, spring, stuff like that. I think what I got to do is like, I got to make the investment in something like the Traeger, and like where it's less like kind of, you have to like baby it sort of thing and look at it. My stepdad, he loves to smoke, and he's a traditional on the grill, do the stuff like that. There is no propane, there is no electricity, there is no nothing, and he loves to smoke and do. He also is, mostly retired now, so has the time to take care of it. So I think that's one of the be those things. My biggest smoking thing is I'm a cigar smoker, as many people know, so that's usually what happens with me on a regular basis. The meat I love to smoke is actually I used to do like pork butt all the time. I'd have a Labor Day party. I want to get into, and I think it's when you get that kind of like the more professional one, you get to like doing the brisket, because what I don't want to do is buy $150 piece of meat and then basically open it up and have like a lump of coal, which I've also seen those horror pictures from as well.
I'm a pellet grill guy. I had the one where I had to build the fire and babysit it, but then I had kids and don't have time either. So the pellet grill works well. So I'm a Traeger fan. I would encourage it too. So that's cool. So I'm on board with your coworker that's harassing you.
And everybody tells me the Traegers again and again, and especially, you set the thermometer, you do this, you make sure the hopper, that's why you get the hopper filled. You check it every once in a while, and you set it and kind of forget it. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I know. I'm like, but then I'm like, my biggest problem has been, like, you can't use that to like grill, like, like grill a steak and stuff like that. I'm like, now I have to have two things. And then it's like then do you need the, what's the other thing? The Blackstone. Like my stepdad has a small version and he loves cooking on that. I'm like, now with three things. And I go, I'm going to have more appliances outside than I have in my kitchen soon if we keep going down this route.
Well, I tell you, Ian cooks his steaks on the Traeger, and they turn out pretty good. You can turn up that heat pretty high, and they do good.
I start on the Weber kettle and sear them, and then I move it in the Traeger. So to Erik's point, then you have all these contraptions, and it's I get it, but I enjoy it. So well, thanks for sharing there. So Erik, if anybody wanted to get in touch with you, do you do the social media, LinkedIn, websites, anything? If anybody want to reach out, do you want to plug on here?
For me, LinkedIn is the best and stuff, because I mean, LinkedIn now becomes my Rolodex, because look, people move around, they move around locations, companies and stuff like that. Emails. I actually just was doing something just before the holiday time and sent an email, I bounced back, and I'm like, didn't even know that person left, went to LinkedIn. Oh, look, they're there now. Okay. And then sent them a message through LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is by far the best. Because that'll always be, with me no matter where I am or what I'm doing.
Cool. Well, it's come to the kind of end of the show here. So thank you, Erik, for your time today. It's been a fascinating discussion, really covered a lot of topics in a very short time here. So thank you for all the insights. Thank you to the audience for listening. If you learned something today or laughed or tell someone about this podcast, again, thanks, Erik. And this has been another exciting episode of the Cyber Smokehouse. See you next time.
And that wraps another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at cybersmokehouse.com. Cyber Smokehouse is sponsored by TBD Cyber, a cybersecurity strategy consulting firm.
TBD Cyber works with organizations to assess their security program, develop and implement security initiatives, and optimize their security investments. We work in areas as broad as data security, risk management, cyber resilience, and security architecture. Our clients value us for our extensive expertise and independent advice, which is why we do not sell security products or deliver managed security services. If you want to work with a trusted advisor, we can help. You can learn more at tbdcyber.com. We'll see you on the next one.